Hey everybody, welcome to How the Sausage is Made with Chris Cosentino, where I talk with chefs, restaurateurs, athletes, philanthropists, and pretty much anybody that inspires me. We look below the surface, behind the curtain, and dig deep into how these people got to where they are today. Wins, losses, and everything in between. All right, everybody, I am beyond excited. We have discussed this for quite a bit of time. Marc and I have crossed paths all over this country at events, whether it's at Pebble Beach or in New York or Sobe. So I'm really excited to have Chef Marc Murphy join us on the podcast today. Marc, thanks for taking time out of your schedule.
Chris, I'm happy to be here. I'm glad this worked out. I know it's always tough to get people's schedules, especially busy chefs' schedules, to line up. And here we are.
Finally, it's taken too long, but we're here. So Marc, I really wanted to kind of start at the beginning. Everybody has a unique way of getting to becoming a chef, right? There is no consistent, guaranteed path to that, right? Whether it's a career change or starting off as working in a local farm, or everybody has gotten to where they are in a different way. What was it?
Well, you're absolutely right that everybody has a different path. And now the path seems to be some people are getting there by way of TikTok, which is very different than what we're used to.
It is very.
And I find it very strange because I feel that the resilience and the strength that chefs maybe of our vintage have been through a lot more and been through a lot of different sort of, I would say, trials and tribulations that have made us stronger. It made us stronger and made us more educated. And I think it's interesting to see this. But yeah, everybody does have their own path. And I think that a lot of people in our profession, it was either going to go become a dishwasher or a line cook and hopefully become a sous chef and become a chef, or we were going to end up in jail. Those are probably the two options for some of us. And
yes, I am one of those.
And that's what I love about this industry is we sort of take the downtrodden and we bring them up. I think that this is something that is very, very beautiful about our industry. And it's probably not just our industry. I think that there's a lot of industries that sort of save people because, I wasn't able to be educated like the rest of the world. I'm very dyslexic. I was, at the time when I was young, dyslexic was a disability. Now it's actually an advantage. It's changed a lot. People understand more about it. But back when I was a kid, I was just called dumb. And I was always in the back of the class. I was always in trouble. I was the class clown. I was always being thrown out. I barely made it out of high school. Let's put it that way. When I went to my college counselor meeting, they basically laughed at me and said, "You're not getting into any college, son. You better just go get yourself a job." So that's where I was.
We're in the same boat here. It's the same thing. And they didn't call me dumb. They used another term that we're not allowed to use anymore, which and it's true. And I think those days, dyslexia, ADHD, ADHD is a superpower in our industry, and we've realized that. But dyslexia was not. How did you do in algebra?
I did really well in algebra. That was the only one I could do good in.
How could you I couldn't do it because I got the numbers and the letters all fucked up.
Yeah. No, it was like, me, it was more the reading and writing and I couldn't do any of that stuff. The reading and writing was bad for me, but math was easier for me. For some reason, math clicked for me, which was weird, but
that's amazing. That's amazing. Cause I could do the reading part, but it just took me a lot longer, but the math, the numbers and letters would flip upside down. So I was dumb as a doorknob.
I never understood why we didn't have, like, for example, like lawyers. Cause then later on in my life, I had to have things like that, which were really a terrible thing. Is they'd be like, well, the contract says these words and it could mean this and it could mean that and it could mean this. Yeah. And I'm like, why don't we do this with numbers? Like these numbers in contract world mean exactly that and not anything else. Because then it couldn't move and they could, the word they, it could mean that they did it, the whole thing. It's just so ambiguous. These words, terrible. And then spelling, forget about it. People used to make fun of me even when I was a line cook and you got to label things in the walk-in. It took me years to figure out how to spell stock. I'm still not quite sure how to spell chicken stock. I'd be like, I'll just scribble it so you see the letters. And they'd be like, "Oh, Murphy put the stock away. It's spelt wrong."
So
I was like, you know what? It's made right though. I made it right. I don't care how I spelt it. I know how I made it, and I made it right.
CHX, STK.
Yeah,
That's all you need. The abbreviations work at least, right?
thank goodness.
So what was that like? You had that meeting with the counselor. What was that next step? Were you going to like stage somewhere? Did you start working? Did you
No, quickly. Well, first I moved to New York City. My brother was living here, and I crashed on his couch. His girlfriend and him let me have the extra room, and I had the couch to sleep on. And my brother's girlfriend at the time knew everybody in New York. She was born and raised here, and she was of that age when her friends were getting married or having babies and things like that. And I was always handy. I was always good at construction. I learned how to. I used to do a lot of that. I was really good at wood shop and metal shop and all that stuff. I rebuilt cars. I did all that kind of stuff. So I basically became a handyman for my brother's girlfriend's friends, where I would ended up started to buy tools and I would go out and do things like build closets or paint a baby room. I would stencil the room. I would put cribs together. I would do all sorts of weird tasks. And I was getting paid pretty well, but I was like, it got to a point. I remember one time I was on a ladder. I was really hungover and I'm painting this baby room with eggshell paint because that at the time was supposed to be the paint that's safest for babies to live in or whatever. And I am like, this stuff smells so bad. I'm hungover. I'm nauseous. I'm like, I gotta go do something else. This sucks. I really hate it. Anyway, and then my brother at some point, and I was feeling bad that I was staying there for free. So I would cook dinner every night. I would go buy food. I would cook dinner every night. And then my brother, after a certain point, he'd be like, "You seem to like to cook. You're cooking dinner every night, and you're doing a good job with it. Why don't you go to cooking school?" And I was like, "That's a thing? I had no idea." Anyway, long story short, I found some money that was stashed away in a bank account in Boston that my grandmother, when she died, had left me a couple $1,000, and I went to Peter Cump's New York Cooking School, which is now ICE, International Culinary. I know it's a terrible abbreviation, but they still call it that. It's a cooking school, and I went there, and it was basically what I would have called a professional housewife school at the time, because I was the only person I think that came out of that place that ever ended up in a professional kitchen from years to come. I'm not sure back in the day when it was there, and I loved it. It was like every test or everything we did that was physical and had to be with like doing cooking. I got great grades on, and then when they'd give us these written tests, I'd always screw those up. But the rest of it, I was doing really well in the practical, so I ended up falling in love with it. I loved cooking.
so so you're in Manhattan and you do the schooling. Was there an internship involved, or did you just start looking for a job?
No, well, it was a weird path because I ended up going to Paris to do an apprenticeship because I'm half French. I have a French passport, so I went over there to do an apprenticeship for 2 weeks, and I ended up in this kitchen with this chef who was terrible and literally like stirring the stock, smoking a cigarette. I'm like, I can't work here. This is not right. I knew everything was wrong about this place, so I left. I went to my brother. We have a place in Italy that he bought years ago with some friends out in Roselli outside of Spoleto. So I went there. I hung out for the summer. I redid the electrical. I redid the floors. Roof was leaking, fixed that. And then I ended up meeting a woman and I moved to London for a year. I was goofing off, just not doing much of anything. And then I decided at one point, I was like, I got to go back to America and I better find a job. So by the time I got back to New York, I got my first job because I went back to the cooking school. I can still remember I went to my first stage. I was doing it with Terrence Brennan because a guy in class was working there and he said, "Come on down with me. We're looking for some cooks." And I remember I had $11 left and I was like, I really hope I get this job because I'm hungry. And they threw me on the pasta station and I started like I had to rock out the pasta station. And the hardest thing was like tasting everything and not really I wanted to sit down and eat a bowl of it. I was so hungry. Anyway, so I ended up getting the job and I worked there for almost 2 years. David Pasternak was the sous chef who was my boss. I had Joey Fortunato, who was my boss as well. He was the other sous chef. And Terrence
Wow.
Brennan was the chef. Yeah, it was great.
What was this Picholine or was this prior to Picholine?
Way before Michelin. It was a restaurant called Prefix.
Okay.
We had 3 different prefix menus on there, and it was a busy, busy, busy restaurant. So I worked there for almost 2 years. That was my first, and I was just ecstatic. I was like, "Oh my god, they pay me to do this." I can still remember I was paid $241 a week take home, and I used to work 6 days a week and get yelled at by David Pasternak all day. It was great. I loved it.
That's amazing. $241 a week take home,
Mhm.
right? Like we think about that now and it's just but the amount and what kind of hours were you working then? You were like
Oh. I mean, it was, be in by 1, left at 1. It was just all the time, yeah. It was constant, and I can still remember, there was a big locker room there in the basement where they used to have the checkered pants and the white shirts that you change into, and I remember and all the waiters and everybody, we all changed in the same area, and I remember there was this one waitress, and she had a Southern accent. She was somewhere down south, and I used to be sitting there, and she used to complain because, back then it was all cash. There was not much credit card action, and she'd be down there, counting her money. And I remember she'd be sitting there. She'd be like, "Oh gosh, darn it! It was a slow night. I only made $350 tonight." And I would just sit there, put my shoes on, and take her whatever change. And I was like, one day I'm going to make more money than her. I'm going to make more money because I was making in 1 week what she made in a night. It was just like, it was so unfair. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going to be, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I just kept doing it.
And that learning curve, what was that like, that learning curve? I mean, you're really, this is your first real professional job. That learning curve must have been so steep and just insane.
I mean, it was steep, and I can still remember the pain and the anguish, and all of the burns and the cuts and the yelling and the screaming and the hours of hard work. But the problem is that I enjoyed it so much, and I was actually pretty good at it. And that was the first time in my life as a person. I mean, I was told I was stupid my whole life. I remember growing up as a dyslexic kid, and all of a sudden I'm in a kitchen where, once I learned the station, I would then be given the task of learning the station next to me and taking that one over. And I was like, it dawned on me. I'm like, wait, I'm good at something finally. So almost immediate gratification. And in cooking, we make food, we put it in the window. The chef goes, "Good job," and it goes out to the dining room, and they're happy. It's like the ability to receive compliment like that about your work it blew me away. I was like, this is amazing. Like I never thought, because that truly, and I know people, you think it might be funny, but I was like, I literally, when I was in school, I was like, I figured I was going to be homeless and I wasn't going to have anything because I was being told I was so stupid. So when I started cooking, I was like, listen, homeless, I could probably deal with. I'm pretty handy. I'll be able to get a really nice refrigerator box to live in and, deck it out, but I don't want to be hungry. I love eating. I love food. I grew up in Europe. I was born in Milan. I grew up my father was an American diplomat. We moved every 2 or 3 years. So my mother's French. I lived in Rome, Paris, Villefranche, Genoa, and all over the place, and Paris. So, and every summer we would spend in the south of France with my grandparents and of course, French grandparents. It was, you had breakfast, talked about lunch, talked
Yeah.
about dinner. And I used to go out with my grandfather to the cheese shop and pick out the cheeses. So I knew good food. And I was like, man, homeless, okay, but hungry? I want to eat.
And that's actually really something you just said in there was really, really poignant and important. Is like, for people who are told that they're not good enough, the kitchen gives you, you're reprimanded for mistakes, but you're always rewarded for your successes. And I think that is a really positive work environment. You're growing, and then your boss says, "Great job. Now you're going to start learning next door." That is such a great feeling when you're given a new task, and it's always like, "Chef, add on, I can take another table," or "I want to butcher that. I want to learn how to butcher that fish." And when they start giving you those things, it's a really positive reinforcement that makes you want to learn more.
Well, I mean, not that you get praise mostly in kitchens, because
No,
they
but
kind
you
of
know what
want
I
to.
mean.
They want you to stay at your station and work that for 2 years before they move you
Of
on. Most of
course,
the time,
but you know what I'm saying.
but look. When I worked in Paris, man, I worked in a 1-star Michelin restaurant for 2 years, and after like 6 months, finally the chef was like, because I mean I speak French, I'm half French, but they always called me l'Américain in the kitchen because I had cooked in America and I didn't cook in France. And all of a sudden he said something to me, and I looked at the chef at one point, the sous chef, because the chef was never there, but the sous chef, and I said, "Well, the American's doing pretty good. I'm still here, and I've seen you fire like 50 French people." He goes, Yeah, I guess you're okay. And that was the first compliment he had ever given me. Of course, the whole French kitchen was scared of me when I got there because I was so young and so stupid. First of all, I bought the Michelin guide. I found an old friend. I crashed on his couch. First place I go to is L'Amboiserie in the Place des Vosges, 3-star Michelin restaurant. Of course, I go after service at like 4 o'clock. I knock on the door. I look at the maitre d' and I'm like, hi, I'm here from America and I have a French passport. I can work here. I'd like a job. And the guy just starts laughing. He goes, you what? Like you just walk into a 3-star Michelin restaurant and ask for a job. I'm like, oh, I didn't know how else to do it. And he goes, well, hold on a second. And he went and got Chef Paco, who's the chef. Now his son runs it. And he just starts laughing. He's like, I love it. I love the enthusiasm. He goes, listen, the youngest guy in my kitchen, the last guy I hired has been working for me for 14 years. So people don't usually leave here, but I can give you a couple addresses of people I can point you in the right direction. He sent me around Paris to go look for a job. And yeah, I was so crazy in that regard because now I think about it, I'm like, well, what an idiot would do this, right? To go look for a job like this. And then I get a job in Paris, and I was like, all right, I'm bulldozer. I'm just gonna go in there and I'm gonna do. And this chef, he was a little shorter than I was, and I took the job finally. He looked. I said, listen, I don't want the job unless you really have work for me. He gets up on his tiptoes and he's like, I got work for you, kid, kind of thing. And then a week into my job, I'm working. I'm commis de poisson, right? I'm like I'm the number 2 on the fish station. And this was a tiny kitchen in Paris and right by the Pont Louis Philippe. And I'm like working, I'm like squeezed into the corner, like dicing things, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like this guy is next to me is so slow and so like lazy. I'm like, why is he here? Like I could do both jobs. So after a week, after I learned the station, I got in early one day and I look at the chef and I said, listen, if you want to save some money, fire the guy that works next to me and I'll do both jobs and you don't have to pay me anymore. And he looks at me and he's like, what are you, crazy? Right then. So we work that night and I come back the next morning. The guy's gone. And he looks at me and goes, all right, let me see what you got. And I'm like, finally, some breathing room. I got work both stations. And these French guys in the kitchen look at me like, oh, fuck. What's wrong with this guy?
Well, what year was that? Like, what was that like being?
I was like 23. I mean, over 30 years ago. Yeah, a long time ago. But I thought I was so enthusiastic and I just wanted to learn. I didn't care. They made me work 7 days a week in Paris and I did not complain once. I didn't care. I was like, whatever. I was like, you just fired that guy. I'll do his job too. I'll do it all. I don't care. I just want to learn. And it was like I was a sponge and I was just enthusiastic about it and just wanted to learn more and wanted to do more. But it wasn't just the cooking and all that. It was also the camaraderie, right? Because we're always around people that are like-minded. We love to go out and drink after work together. Some of us, it was always it was sort of like in French, they call it une équipe, which is like a team, right? It's like a soccer team. You have to meld from everybody in the kitchen and we all have to work at the same time, the same rhythm. If somebody falls down, if you like them, you try to prop them up. If they're, not doing too well, you try to teach them. There's the camaraderie in the kitchen is one of the things that I love the most about our business is that just once you're indoctrinated in, you feel good about it. You can really work together and stuff. And it's fun. Of course, then again, you also have all the old stories of it's kind of like a self-cleaning oven too. If you go into a kitchen after 3 or 4 days, you don't learn your station and you suck, we'll make sure that there's things happen that you might want to leave the kitchen, I guess, in a certain way. There's
definitely sabotage. And of course, there's bizutage, right? When they bizutage you on your way out the door, right? So I think so like you're in Paris. How long were you there for? How long did you stay cooking in France?
2 years. I worked there for 2 years. I was going to leave after about a year and a half, but then the chef was going on vacation. The sous chef was going on vacation. So they coerced me into staying another 6 months because the chef where I was good friends with Alain Ducasse. And they go, if you stay throughout the summer and cover all the stations while everybody goes on vacation, we'll get you an apprenticeship at Ducasse in Monte Carlo. And I was like, I don't think I will. I'm like, if I go back to America and I'm going to go into a kitchen and say I turned down an apprenticeship at Ducasse, they're going to kill me. All right, I'll do it. So I stayed another 6 months. And then I went and did a 3-month stage in Ducasse in Monte Carlo.
How was that? What was that like going from Paris to Monte Carlo and being in Ducasse's kitchen?
Well, when you work in a 1-star Michelin in Paris, where you're constantly scraping by and there's 8 cooks in the kitchen and sometimes there's 4 because of budget cuts and whatever, and you're working your butt off and all of a sudden I got to Ducasse and it was like 7 guys working the fish station and 10 people having lunch. I'm like, oh, I don't, I'm never going to own a restaurant like this. Where's all the payroll going? So, I mean, it was fun. I stayed there I got to see a bunch of stuff. After a while, I was just like, hey, can I go work with the bread guy? Because he seemed cool and everybody, he was less uptight than everybody else in the kitchen. And he's like, yeah, sure. Come in at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I ended up going, and we used to make like 27 different breads every day. And the first day I go work with him, I'd never seen this in my life before, but I got to work at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and he takes the olive bread from the day before and he hands it to me and cuts it open, reaches his hand into a jar of pitted Niçoise olives. My first time I had ever seen something like this. Takes out a bunch, puts it in the bread and hands it to me and pours me a glass of red wine and goes, let's have breakfast. I'm like, I love this guy. he was marching to a beat of a different drum at the 3-star Michelin restaurant. He was a great baker. So I worked with him for a couple of weeks, and it was really fun. Then I went back to America. Ended up, the old chef de cuisine at Ducasse was Sylvain Porté, and he had just left when I got to Monaco. So 3 months later, when I got back to New York, Ducasse called him and said, hey, there's this American guy moving back to New York. He should come work for you at Ducasse, at Le Cirque. So I got back to New York, and I guess on my resume had my old roommates, or my place I crashed down on the way in the East Village. And I walked in the door and the phone rang. I had an angry French man on the phone going, why aren't you at work? Ducasse told me you were coming to work. I'm like, I just got off the plane. So I went to work, and I've been working for him for years.
That's crazy. I mean, I remember when Sylvain came here to San Francisco to take over at
L'Orangerie.
Yeah. He was
And
here
the
for
guy
a while.
before that at L'Orangerie was Gilles Pied, who was the chef at the restaurant that I had been chef at in Paris, at Le Miraville, which is kind of funny. Yeah.
Isn't it really interesting? And I think, I remember that being told this in culinary school. It's a very small world, and you always come back to the same people. And it's really important to remember that, because making a good impression, following through, being consistent will benefit you in the future, because that loop is tight. Our industry's small.
Yeah. And I always used to tell people, like, you got to, well, a couple of things. First, you should work somewhere minimum a year. Probably 2 years to be able to really understand a kitchen from top to bottom if you work your way through the whole thing. And also the other thing I learned, and I learned this from David Pasternak, because he was my first hellfire teacher. A couple things he taught me. One, the first thing was, and the meetings always happen in the walk-in because nobody could hear anything in there.
Yes.
Murphy in the walk-in. I'm like, that's where I used to get yelled at by David. And he said to me one time, he goes, listen, I want you to understand something. You're going to come to work. You're going to shut the fuck up, and you're going to take what you want to take, and you're going to leave what you don't want to leave, what you don't want to hear, right? Like, go into any job and listen to everything. People are going to tell you not to do certain things that you're going to disagree with. Don't sit there and disagree with them, because you know what? It's not going to work. If you go open your own restaurant, you'll know not to do that, right? You learn a lot about working in restaurants, what not to do. And you do more sometimes than what you should be doing, right? It's like, oh wow, I'm never going to reply to a cook that way, or I'm never going to talk to somebody that way, or I'm never going to make my béarnaise that way. You know what I mean? All sorts of different life lessons you learn that way.
It's really, like you take
The
notes,
other one,
file it away.
Yeah, exactly. File it away, but just don't there's not enough time in the kitchen to start talking back or negotiating. Why are we not doing this? Why are we doing this? And the other one I got from David, which was one of my best advices I ever had, and I've given it out to some of my younger cooks, is I got in to work really late one day. I overslept. I got in a lot of trouble. He ended up making me peel and slice 100 pounds of onions, very, very thin. And then he basically turned them into like a soup, which was hilarious because it's like, digging a ditch and filling it basically. And at the end of the night, he calls me off the line and he brings me into the walk-in for a meeting. And he goes, Murphy, sometimes you got to go home and have milk and cookies. I'm like, yes, chef. Milk and cookies tonight, chef. Like, he's like, stop going out and partying every night.
Yep.
And he was like, every once in a while, you got to go home. So every once in a while, he'd be leaving early or something. He'd look at me, hey, Murphy, what are you doing tonight? Milk and cookies, right? I'm like, yes, sir. Milk and cookies tonight.
I think that's a good point, because you get hung up in the game, right? And you feel like you have to, and it can be over. Look, I'll say it. I got hung up in the game. I'm dry almost 8 years. I got hung up in the game, and the game won. Now I'm dry and I'm a better person for it. But it took me a long time to realize that. And
Oh, and that is it's a tough industry for that because we're around it all the time.
yeah,
It's extremely difficult. There's some people can and some people just shouldn't, right?
yes,
And there's people that can control it and there's people that can't, but it's a double-edged sword. We've seen many of our colleagues go
yes.
down over the years. I mean, I've had sous chefs that I've put through rehab. I can just tell you. I mean, I've had, I can remember one, years later, the mother showing up in my kitchen crying, saying, "You saved my son's life." It was like, and it's true. We have to watch out for each other in that sense because there is the element of party hard. It doesn't matter how messed up or how tired you are. You just keep working. And there is that mentality. And, that's not, I don't think it's going to go away, but it has to be dealt with, I think, in a lot of ways. I think
Yeah.
people
I
have to
mean,
understand and people have to look out for each other. And, when shit's going bad, you shouldn't feel bad bringing it up and being like, all right, hey, listen, you need to straighten up and fly right. Something's got to happen here because you're not going to keep going like this.
reel it in, go home and read a book, read a cookbook instead of going out and, the decompress is hard from the restaurant on a busy night. And that's what people know.
Well,
So,
it's people don't realize that when we get off work, if we're done at midnight, that's our afternoon. Like if you work in an office, that's 5 o'clock, right? You go out for cocktails and you dwindle down the night. We're going out at midnight when people are going pretty hard already, and we just hop on that bus and keep going. Well, that's our afternoon looks a little different than the person who works in a bank who gets out at 5 o'clock their afternoon, right?
yeah.
'Cause
And
they might be
it's
able to go
about,
see. They might be able to go see a movie. The movie theaters are closed at midnight.
yeah, it's
We're
about
not going
making,
there.
at that point, it's about making good choices, right? And like David said, milk and cookies, milk and cookies. So you're with Sylvan, you're at Le Cirque. What comes next from that?
Then after that, because Joey Fortunato was my sous chef as well with David Pasternak, he had been recruited by Drew Nearpont to open up a restaurant called Layla down in the Tribeca, and I had been working at Le Cirque for quite some time. I worked all the stations. I had done everything there besides be sous chef, and I didn't really want to be there. And there was plenty of sous chefs that were staying there. They weren't leaving. So Joey called me up and he says, "Hey, listen, I'm opening up a Middle Eastern Mediterranean restaurant in Tribeca." And this is years ago, right before that really happened, when all the Middle Eastern restaurants and that they were all in Queens still. There was none in Manhattan run by a restaurateur. And so we spent a couple months, researching and developing everything. And we opened up Layla, and it was a big success. I only lasted there 6 months because there was a consulting chef there that ended up coming and taking me away to Drew's dismay and brought me up to be the chef at Cellar in the Sky on top of the World Trade Center. And then I was the reopening chef after the first bombing. I took care of the cellar and I took care of the bar up there. So I was the chef up there for almost 2 years.
Yeah,
Which
I
was
remember. I remember when Layla was opening. That's when I was working at Rubicon.
Oh, you were? Okay. So that's why
Yeah,
the whole Drew world.
the whole
Hmm.
Drew world. So I was working at Rubicon when Layla was starting, and then I went out to Martha's Vineyard to open the Coach House. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's around that timeline where that was all happening. Small world, right?
Small world.
Small world.
We work for the same company. We didn't even know it basically.
As a chef, I'm always asked the same question. What's your secret to making a restaurant quality dish at home? It's not just the ingredients, it's how you bring them to life, and it starts with the right tools. Heston's Probon professional clad cookware collection will give you control, consistency, and confidence. It's cookware that makes you want to cook more. Check it out at hestonculinary.com and use my promo code COOKWITHCHRIS for 10% off your first order. So you reopen, you're doing the restaurant. What comes next? Like you're there and you were at that Windows on the World. How long were you there for?
I was there, I guess almost 2 years, but then the back of the house general manager, George Mazrafi, he got let go and they wanted to revamp the whole place up and they brought Michael Lomonaco in to revamp and he was taking over the banquets and Windows on the World. And, I don't know. It got a little messy, but anyway, I ended up leaving.
And what was your next step from there? I mean, is this when you started looking at doing your own? Is it,
No,
you're,
then I was, it was a bit messy. I got divorced, left that job. I remember I totaled my motorcycle all this happened within 2 weeks. And then I had to start from zero again because my bank account was emptied. The failed marriage didn't work out well, but I lost everything, and I was then back on my brother's couch. And I thought, well, it's time to rebuild. So I started up again. Interestingly enough, a friend of mine who knew I was down on my luck, but obviously had fed many times and was a good friend. And she said to me, she goes, listen, I'm gonna treat you. You're gonna take you out to a nice meal. So we went to UP. We went to Union Pacific, where Rocco Dispirito was the chef.
Wow.
This was in the heyday of UP, right? And of
Yep.
course, I knew Rocco because in between jobs, every once in a while, we'd cater together, and things like that. We knew each other through the business. And he comes out of the kitchen to the dining room, and I'm having dinner, and I'm feeling all like, hey, I'm having dinner in a fancy restaurant, and here's Rocco, and he comes over with a phone number, and he goes, "Listen, I heard what happened at Windows. I know you're gone. This guy's looking for a high-end chef to open a restaurant on the Upper East Side, and I think you're the guy to do it. He's been hounding me looking for a chef." So I called the guy, and I ended up talking to him, and I took the job, and that's when I was hired to become the chef at a place called La Fourchette on the Upper East Side. And it was challenging because it was, what was it, like First Avenue and like 3rd Street, like out of way the hell up there. But we got really good reviews. Ruth Reisel loved it. I remember my review from Ruth. I got reviewed in Gourmet Magazine at the same time as Scott Conant, oddly enough. We're in the same magazine, which was really funny. I don't think we knew each other. And all of a sudden, like, who's this guy? He's like, who's this guy? And it was really funny. But yeah, so I did that. But before I did that, construction was delayed, obviously. So he wanted to open another restaurant. I opened up a 24-hour bistro for him, which was a great challenge. And then I ended up doing La Fourchette for a couple of years. Yeah, I bounced around a bit, did different projects. And then after La Fourchette, we ended up opening up a restaurant called Chinoiserie for him. Same guy, Abraham Merchant, which was a lot of fun. It was, more down on 27th Street, which was great. Yeah. Oh, then yeah, sort of
It's
a
it,
weird trajectory, as we all
no,
have.
everybody has the different trajectory. It's just, how everybody, there's that saying, the measure of our success is how we deal with our problems, right? Not how we create them. And I think this is a perfect, you're just navigating different byways to get where you are today. And I think that's also shaped who you are, right?
Yeah,
And
it's
that's made you the
survival.
chef you are. Yeah. So you open all these restaurants. What was next? Like, you've done a 24-hour bistro, you got La Fourchette, you've had great reviews from Ruth, you've got Bon Appetit just wrote about you, and you're like, and now the dots are being connected. You and Scott, and you've already known Rocco, and all the people are starting. It's the world's getting smaller, right? Like, it's getting
Yeah,
smaller yet bigger at the same time.
you know what was interesting is back in the days is the one thing that really got us connected, and I found this is interesting because I've always been involved with charities, right? With
Yep.
Share Our Strength, No Kid Hungry. Been involved with City Harvest, which is our local food rescue program here in New York City. And they do these benefits where they have all these chefs come and they put out a canopy or whatever, and people buy tickets and people come and see you and you chat. And then you end up meeting other chefs or other people. I used to work with you at this place, and now you're the sous chef over here. Oh, you're the chef over here. And I found that was a way, once I started getting invited to go and participate and be in those circles, you sort of feel like, oh shit, I kind of made it, right? I'm here Jean Georges is over there, handing out something fancier than I could afford. And you got, somebody over here, and it was all this like camaraderie going on with that way. And I thought that was it was fun. It was fun because we all got to see each other, but were like, you felt like you were all of a sudden accepted into a club, I'm part of the Elks Club now.
Exactly. I would almost call that like, I would always say that it was kind of like old home week, right? You never get to spend time with everybody during your busy holidays. Everything's going crazy. But then you do this charity event and everybody comes together. You get to hang out. You get to catch up on what's going on, what's new, what have you found, new purveyors. Everybody just chats and like builds a community.
But you're invited to the dance too, because
Yes,
I was never invited to the dance, and all of a sudden I became, when I was at Sailor in the Sky or whatever, and I was like, oh my gosh, they want me there too, and I'm there with this guy, and he's been doing this a lot longer than me, and things like that. So that was a nice little sort of feather to put in your cap. But I know that chefs are extremely philanthropic and we're always giving back. Every time there's a disaster, who jumps in first, but to donate his restaurants, who goes out and cooks first, like when 9/11 happened, I grabbed my knife roll. I was at Tribeca Grill in the basement prepping, right? I mean, everybody hops in and that's the beautiful thing, but also it also brings people together. And I think that the charities that we work for, they need some credit for bringing us together to, one, be able to help us help other people, but also to bring these communities together and us to share times together. I think it's interesting. I mean, Share Our Strength does that bike trip every year. I have not, unfortunately, done that bike trip. You might have. Have you done that bike to care? What is it called? I forgot the
Which
name of it.
one? The one
Cycle
in
for Survival, or what's the
Chef
one that?
Cycle? Chef
Yeah, Chef
Cycle?
Cycle. Yeah, yeah.
I did it for
Have
10
you done
years.
that?
10 years.
You've been doing. Okay, great. See, and you get to see everybody every year, right?
Yeah. I did it for 10 years. I missed this past year. But yeah,
That's kind of cool.
it's cool. And I think, that's a really big thing. Like, chefs are extremely philanthropic. They always want to give back. We are the first reach out by everyone during anything, whether it's my daughter's ballet troupe needs to raise funds, the school needs money for new supplies. Restaurants are the first ones that people go to
Yeah.
ask for help. And I
I know.
think, we are always the first ones to say yes, sometimes to our own demise.
Exactly. Yeah. So my trajectory, I forgot what your question was really about,
No, it's all right.
after Windows in the World. Was it after Windows in the World? Oh, then I opened La Fourchette.
No, La
And then
Fourchette. You were La Fourchette in
La
those.
Fourchette, and then I did chinoiserie, but I was working with it. Anyway, the whole thing, everything stopped. 9/11 happened and we all
Yeah.
just closed everything up. And I was about to actually get on my motorcycle and drive to San Diego to go see a buddy of mine, one of my old sous chefs, Hans, to help him because he had bought a house down there and he was redoing stuff, sheetrocking and stuff. And I'm like, hey, I got nothing to do here. I'm going to come and help you. And I had mapped out a motorcycle trip down south and crossing the southern part of the country because it was going to be cold, and I figured I'd go. But then the guy who I worked with, who I did La Fourchette with and chinoiserie, and this guy, Abraham Merchant, he calls me up and he goes, listen, my restaurant that I had also helped with was a place called Southwest New York in the financial district. The landlord had come to them with a really good deal to reopen the place because they needed a restaurant down there in that area because they were trying to revive the businesses and stuff like that after 9/11. So they gave him a really good deal. And in turn, I went to see him at the office and he goes, Mark, I get this good deal if I open this restaurant up in 1 week from today. And I said, it was literally the woodworking shop during the recovery effort after 9/11. And they had
Wow.
cleared it out and they wanted him to reopen the place, and they had gotten everything tested and the air and all that stuff and the stoves. And I said to him, I said, you're crazy. Like, you want me to open this in a week? And he's like, yeah, you're the only person I know that can do this. And he literally handed me an envelope full of cash and said, please, can you do this for me? And I said, I'll do the back of the house, but you're hiring this guy to do the front of the house, who I knew and I worked with. He was this guy named Patrick Faup, and he was also in the French army, or the Légion d'honneur. He was a taskmaster of sorts. And
Wow.
but he had been the front of the house manager of Windows on the World as well, which was a big restaurant, and he could command a room and he could get shit done basically. So we reopened the place in 5 days, him and I, and got this place going, which ended up being, I didn't end up leaving New York to go help my friend in San Diego. Anyway, and then my future wife came for dinner there, and that's it. So I was like, okay, I did that for 3 months, got the place going, handed it off, trained another guy to take it over, and I left it. I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. And then my girlfriend and I got some tickets and we went to Europe for 3 months and goofed off. Went to see, we started in London. We went to Amsterdam, went to Paris. We just bounced around Europe. And after, we were going to stay 4 months. And after 3 months, she looked at me and she goes, all right, I'm done with the tour de Marc. Like, we had seen every one of my relatives and any one of my friends. So we came back to America, and then we ended up buying this building in Tribeca and opening Landmarc in Tribeca.
Wow.
That's how that happened.
Wow. So she knew what she was getting into after she met everybody, every part of your European lineage. She met everybody. She was like, all right, the deal's done. I know what I'm getting into.
Exactly. And then after 6 months later, we had a daughter, and and then just from there, it just kept going. I did Landmarc at Time Warner. I did Ditch Plains, two of them. And then halfway through somewhere in there, I remember once I had all these employees, I ended up having an assistant. She gave me a CD. Remember those? You used to slip them in your computer and they said,
Yeah.
the Food Network would like you to go do this show called Chopped. And I was like, really? And funny enough, it was the pilot. And you know who was on the pilot? Rocco DiSpirito.
Oh my God, that's
I'm
so
like, "Oh my
funny.
god, really?" Anyway, so I ended up going to do that, and then that's how the whole TV thing sort of started. What I liked about the TV thing was, and it's more poignant today, probably from my first comments about some people are now coming up through TikTok becoming chefs. But everybody that was on that show from the beginning, the producer Linda Lee, she was like, "I want people that are cooks and chefs to be judges because they understand it." And most television shows, which of course you've been on many of them, where they make you wear what they call an earwig, which is that little thing in your
Yeah.
ear for producers to speak to you. She refused and would not let anybody producer be in our ear because she's like, we hired these people as judges because they know what they're talking about. They don't need a producer to tell them how, if a pan is crowded and the chicken thighs aren't going to get crispy in 20 minutes because there's too much stuff in that pan, and it's not going to get, a producer's not going to tell you that. But a guy or a gal who's sitting behind a judge's table who's been cooking for 20 years is going to know that from here. I don't need anybody telling me that. So that's what made that show really real, which I really liked about that.
That's awesome. That's so crazy. I remember coming to Shoreditch when you opened the first one. I don't know if you remember. I remember I was in New York, and I think it was like maybe a food and wine event. I remember coming to your opening party there.
For which one?
Which location was the first in the
Oh, for
city?
Landmarc? Is it?
No, it wasn't Landmarc. It was what was the other location?
I had Landmarc, Ditch Plains, and I also did a thing called
Ditch Plains.
Kingside. Ditch
Ditch
Plains. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember coming into Ditch Plains when you had an opening party, and ironically, I was in New York for something, who the fuck knows what it was. And they were like, "Hey, everybody, we're going over to Mark's opening." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And they were like, "No, you should come." And I was like, "But I wasn't invited. Like, this isn't," I was like, that's rude. They were like, "Don't worry, he'll be fine." And I remember coming, and it was so cool. Like, and I think that was the first time we actually met, but you were so busy. It's like talking to everybody. Everybody was like congratulating you.
Half of New York was running around there. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
that's
much
so
what it
fun.
was. But it's
That's
like,
fun.
it is really interesting how many ways as chefs we cross paths. And it's so hard, I think, sometimes because we all want to like get to hang out and talk and chat and do those things. But sometimes it's just too hard. And like you said, those events get to bring us together where we can actually kind of breathe a little bit and catch up and really get to like spend more time. And I think that's really important for our industry because we're giving back, but also we're feeding our souls by giving back to the community and also connecting with our peers.
Right. I mean, South Beach. Why do we go to South Beach every year? We certainly don't get paid to go there, and we just go and hang out. We get to go see we get to see the fans that know us from television, which is really rewarding. And then we get to hang out with our friends and our buddies, like Pebble Beach, all these food festivals
Yeah.
we do. I'm going next week, Thursday. I'm going up to Mohegan Sun, and it's like I'm going to go in a casino for 3 days with all my friends and hang out and and shoot the shit and find out what everybody's been up to. Like Scott Conan, for example, is going to be there. I haven't seen him in like a year. He launched this new tomato thing, and he seems to
Yeah.
be doing great. I see him doing great on Instagram, but it's like I can't wait to sit down and actually have a drink with him or have a meal with him and chit chat and talk about life. See how I don't know how his kids are doing. I'd love to hear about it.
I think that's really one of the things that we work so much. We're constantly going that we don't get that time like a lot of other folks have to spend with our peers. So you have the restaurants, you've done the TV, you're still doing all of it.
Retired.
Now you're retired.
Well, what I did do is literally 6 months before COVID, I got super lucky. I have two of my leases were up. Ditch Plains, where you went to that party, I had it
Yeah.
for 14 years. The one on the Upper West Side closed. That one wasn't working really financially. And then I was in the midst of transferring my Tribeca building from a Landmarc. It had been Landmarc for 17 years. And I was like, when I opened Landmarc in Tribeca, there was 5 restaurants down here. There was
Yeah.
Odeon, Tribeca Grill, and like two other places, right? All of a sudden, Tribeca got very crowded with a lot of restaurants, and I wasn't paying as much attention to it. So I was like, you know what? I closed it down. I was going to turn it into a private event space. Then I got into a tiff with my landlord at Time Warner Center, which was my biggest restaurant. It was a 300-seat restaurant in the Time Warner Center, and I was just, I basically got to a point with that, and I was just done with it. It wasn't, and all this happened, and it literally 6 months before COVID hit. So I mean, I had 650 employees before that. And I basically got rid of everything slowly over the 6 months. And then when COVID hit, I still remember Josh Capon called me up and goes, dude, how did you know this was going to happen? You got rid of everything, right? And I was like, I got so lucky. I mean, I didn't have to deal with PPP money and all this bullshit that was going on. And I was like, oh, now I've got time to do my Tribeca space over really slowly. And I reinvented it into a private event space. And yeah, so that's basically what I did. And during that time, I put in a kitchen it looks like a home here now in my space in Tribeca. So I could do demos and things like that. And it turned out to work out great because then Guy was doing, we were doing grocery games remotely, which was hilarious when we were shooting TV shows. Everybody was home by themselves where the
Yeah.
Food Network just send me like a tripod and two suitcases with iPhones in it and stuff. And I remember these little packages of these things to get the grease off your face for makeup room. But I'm like, what is
My
this?
God.
And they're like, well, if you're shiny, you have to. I'm like, oh my, they thought of everything. Anyway, we were setting up our own things and doing that here. And when COVID ended, oddly enough, my GM, who was with me at Time Warner, he had been a waiter and an AGM and a GM for 10 years. He was looking for work, and I brought him back, and we basically, him and I started up the private event business in Tribeca. I still have the building here. I do private events, and it's great. But after I did that for 6 months, I got the itch. You know how we are, these chefs. We always want to
Yes.
open a restaurant. We're going to open a restaurant. But when I hired him, I said, if I try to open a restaurant, quit, because we can't do that. I'm not going back there again. We're going to just do the private event space. So we compromised. And now what I do is I do a pop-up restaurant 3 days a month. So we play restaurant 3 days a month here. And the rest of the time it's a private event space. So that's one of the things that I'm doing, which keeps me busy. This is what I would, and I also, my brother, that house that I told you in Italy, my brother during COVID, I remember he was standing in my living room. He was living in Bangkok at the time with his wife and his 6-year-old or 4-year-old kid. And COVID was hitting. He goes, I'm going to the house in Italy. And he got rid of everything in Bangkok and they went and joined him over there. So he's been living there since the beginning of COVID. And he's basically had this place for 30 years. And over time, my brother and I decided, let's buy some land there. Let's get some olive trees. And then now we have a whole lot of land. I didn't realize how much it was until I went there a year ago. And now we have 400 olive trees. And now we started, because I've always imported olive oil for my own restaurants from
Yeah.
this Frontoio. It's a little town with
Yeah.
42 people. 42 people live in this town. Everybody goes to this one guy and they press all the olives. And anyway, I've been buying olive oil for my restaurants from there. So now we finally decided we're going to take our olive oil and then we buy other olives from other people as well. We make our own blend and we import it. And here I have it right here. I can show you. It's called Umbrian Gold.
Nice.
And it's from Umbria, obviously. Everybody knows Tuscany because of the movies, but Umbria is right below Tuscany.
Yep.
A lot of people don't even know that it's a region in Italy. So we have great olive oil. I imported. It's sold at Williams Sonoma. I sell it on my website as well. We sell it on, and we ship it out from here. And it's been great. It's been great fun. It's really fun is when you tell people, oh, it's olive picking season. I'm going to go. I have to go see my brother because he gets upset if I don't go pick the olives, which I didn't do one year. So this year I was like, I'm going to pick olives. The amount of people that say to me, can I come? Can I come? So literally,
Yeah.
I went there. So I'd rented a car, at the Rome airport. I ordered a car. And literally a couple weeks later, I'm like, I got to cancel the car. I need a van. Like so many people were coming with me and we've sort of found places to stay. So all my neighbors in Italy are showing up like, where'd you get all this labor? You got all these New Yorkers coming in. I can pick olives. My old sous chef from
That's
San
awesome.
Diego and his wife, they came over from San Diego. I have one of my cooks and her husband, they came. So everybody comes and picks up. It's great. It's such a great, but the most amazing thing to me is like those 2 weeks that I'm there. you just connect with the soil, you connect with land, you disconnect from everything, and then you go to Assisi for lunch afterwards. I mean, it's not like a lot of labor. It's like we pick in the morning and in the afternoon we go goof off, go down to Spoleto, go to some restaurants, some friends that I know. I know a lot of people over
Yeah,
there. So it's so much fun. It's a great project. It's fun. And now we're also planting grapes and we're going to start doing wine. So why not? It's fun. Now I'm a farmer.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
It's a lot.
So what's your
It's so much fun.
what is I gotta come one time. My wife and I gotta come and do that with you. I would love that. I've
Sure.
always we've been to Olivestri and we went and did a harvest and a crush for the Olio Nuovo one season with Howard Case from Casa de Case many years ago, and it was such an amazing experience, especially being in the crush room. The inside of my glasses were coated just from the oil, the particulate in the air. It's like you don't even realize how much it's there, right? So cool. So what is your your thought on perception versus reality with social media, especially in our industry?
Well, I mean, I think it's with every industry. I mean, I have a son who's a basketball player and he's been growing up. He's 19 now. He got recruited. He's going to be going to Ithaca. He was recruited as a point guard for Ithaca, which I'm very proud of him. He's been going really
Congratulations.
hard at it. It's quite amazing. But, even when him growing up, as a child, when he was 13 or whatever, and like I could see that sometimes kids that age watching social media get disappointed and get, wow, these people are so much better than me. These people are so much better. On social media, nobody puts when they miss a 3-pointer, and they never put when they miss a layup, or when they screw up when they try to dunk and they miss the dunk, or when they fall down and skin their knees. And it's the same thing with cooking, like people, you probably don't see I'm sure that a lot of these content creators make a bunch of shit before they make something nice that they're actually going to put. They don't put the mistakes on there. So the reality is that it's all curated and it's all polished and it's all digital. It's all edited, so it looks like people look like they're just having the best lives ever, and they travel and they're always doing this great stuff. So I think it's tough especially for kids growing up when they feel like everybody in the world is perfect and life is not perfect. And the perception of social media, I think, is harmful for people sometimes because they think everybody else is doing so much better than them.
The
If you look
FOMO factor, they call it, right?
yeah,
The fear of missing out or fear that somebody's better than you.
yeah. And then somebody's
100%.
like, oh, this guy's doing great. And then you'll read in the paper, child filed chapter 11. Thought it was going great. It looked good on
Yeah,
Instagram.
exactly.
Oh, God.
What
Yeah.
has
So that's
been
tough.
what has been your worst professional mistake?
I think that my
Not
mistakes are,
culinarily.
no,
Not
no, but
culinarily.
my mistakes are my strength as well, though. I mean, because I think that you make mistakes and you learn from them. And I'm happy with every screw up I've ever done because it's brought me to where I am. There's no way I wouldn't be who I am if it hadn't been for the mistakes. And I think that's true of all of us. I mean, you make mistakes in dishes and things that, whatever. But I mean, but literally, like, if I hadn't told this person to go to hell and hadn't walked out of that job or whatever it was, I wouldn't have done the next thing on my schedule, where it wouldn't have been my trajectory. Yeah, and of course I made mistakes as a kid, as a young cook, I talked back or whatever, or this and that, but how else am I going to learn? I feel like you get a PhD in restaurant life and restaurant business every year because you're learning from your mistakes. Nobody teaches you that stuff. And I wasn't very good at school, as you know. So I was, I learned by falling down, skidding my knees and getting back up. Then I won't do it again in that time. It won't hurt next time, but I wouldn't have learned any other way. I don't think.
You already answered my next question. Which is, it's, the question I have is, do you have any regrets and what would you change? And your answer is no. And I love that. What has been your most memorable meal?
The one I say it a lot because it's probably it felt like magic when I ate it, and it was very young, and it was at La Chèvre d'Or in the south of France. It was a very fancy restaurant, and I used to judge restaurants when I was a kid, not by the Michelin stars because I didn't know them and I didn't whatever the ratings were. I used to judge it on how many glasses and how much silverware was on the table when I would show up.
I love that.
I would sit down and be like, I got 4 forks on the left and 4 knives on the right. We're in for a treat. It's going to go on for a while, right? And La Chèvre d'Or was one of those restaurants, which, by the way, I was going to go to once when I was down in the south of France. I'm like, oh, this place is so expensive. It's crazy. But I remember having a raspberry souffle there that I was probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 years old or 11, whatever. I ate this thing and I was like, this is magic. I mean, I don't even make pastries. I'm a terrible pastry chef. I hate it. I don't like it. I don't really even like dessert that much. But this dish, it was like eating heaven. I mean, it was like I had never had. I mean, I had had soufflés before, but this thing was just so perfect, and I was just blown away by that one dish. I mean, because there's not one meal that's memorable. That for me, food is memory, but experiences are memory as well. You know, sitting in Ventimiglia having one of the best linguine alle vongole overlooking the Mediterranean. Was that vongole better than the one I had somewhere else? No, but it was the experience. It's who I was with. It's the temperature of the air, the wine that you're drinking with the meal, the meal who you're sharing it with. I think that's what it's so funny because people, especially in the restaurant industry, as chefs, we are very particular and we're very precise and we want things to be perfect. And I realized that long before I became a chef that it wasn't just about the food. It's about the experience. And I used
Yeah.
to tell my wait staff, I was like, listen, is the temperature of the room right? Is the music okay? Is it too loud? Is the food hot? It's supposed to be hot. The food cold. Are their drinks warm or cold, which are they're supposed to be? The one thing we cannot control is who they're having dinner with. But that's the other part of the equation, right? You can make everything else perfect. But it's also like when you go to these really fancy restaurants where I just don't feel comfortable. It's like going to midnight mass at the Vatican, right? It's like, oh, it's going to last hours and I'm uncomfortable, right? But the food could be perfect, but I don't want to go back. Like I'd rather have all five senses happy than just the food is. Oh, the food's like it's like on a pedestal and it's really beautiful and this and that. But I mean, if the music sucks and it feels like you're uncomfortable, and I don't want that. So I feel like the perfect meal isn't just about the food. It's about everything. Probably maybe one of the most memorable meals for me was the last meal I ever had with my grandfather before he died. That was, I might not remember the food, but I remember the
Moment.
experience of sitting around a table. And sitting
Yeah.
around a table is one of the most enjoyable things to me. My family makes fun of me because I have breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. And like, even if I'm by myself, I'm in New York, I'm like, I have all my lunch spots, a bar where I'll sit at and I'll stop by and see Jonathan Waxman, of course, to get a nice, today's an amatriciana day, right? But to me, it's like, it's always, meals are very important to me, but for food, but also for nourishment, but also to nourish the soul and nourish the camaraderie and whatnot.
I love that. It's true.
That's why I don't condone walking around and eating. I like to sit down. I want a napkin on my lap and I want a dish in front of me.
What won't you eat?
I don't eat a lot of processed foods. I try. I mean, you'll never catch me sitting down and eating an Oreo or drinking soda it's not that I know that it's bad for me, but I just don't like it. I didn't grow up with it. I didn't grow up with soda. I didn't grow up with that kind of crap. And to me, it's just, and you just feel like shit afterwards. I'm like, why would I do that to myself? I love a really good orange is great. Rather have that. My taste buds, my senses, and my health is something that I, try to be. I'd rather eat a nice, something cooked by Marco Pure White with a lot of butter than something else. Do
Yeah,
you ever watch him on Instagram? He's the best.
he is.
I
He's
just
pretty
I
funny.
saw him. I saw him this morning. I thought pomme fondant. And he goes, "Oh, you've got to cook with a lot of butter." He lays the whole bottom of the pan with butter and then puts the potatoes on top
Oh, it's
and the little
insane.
end cooks it down slowly. And he's just like, "Hey, you just got to cook with butter." Oh God, I love that guy. Yeah.
If you could eat with anyone, with us or gone, who would it be?
I always usually say to this question, I think that Winston Churchill had a great life. I think he was a great person. And I love the idea of a nice glass of champagne and a cigar and a beautiful meal because I think he probably enjoyed food as much as I do and would have been a very interesting guy to hang out with. And I'm also I've over the past 10 years, slowly I've gotten to be I've been a cigar aficionado. So I like a good cigar as well if I have the time because it's another thing that's a special moment in sharing with people because as even my doctor told me, he goes, yeah, they're not supposed to be good for you, but if you actually sit down for an hour with friends and enjoy their company and smoke a cigar every once in a while, that's probably doing better for you than running around like an idiot like I always do.
What, and I know you remember this, we waited for it. I did. I waited for the magazine Food Arts to come out. And they had the section in the magazine. What did they know? The flops, the dish that you thought was going to win on the menu that the public didn't get. You remember that section? It was fucking awesome, right? Like
Yep.
everybody would admit their faults. And I thought that was one, as a young cook, that was a huge thing because chefs were admitting this didn't work, or I was wrong and the guest was right, or just the balance wasn't there. What was your biggest culinary flop? That version that you would have been proud enough to put in that Food Arts for the Bataberries?
Well, the interesting thing that I think is there's two interesting thoughts on that, because I remember a dish that I did at La Fourchette and nobody bought it. Nobody wanted it. This is a long time ago. And I can still remember it was a filet of John Dory, and it sat on top of cumin scented carrots with a lemon beurre blanc, right?
That sounds great.
It was a fantastic dish. Nobody bought it because of the word cumin. Nobody understood what cumin was at the time. I rewrote the menu and I took the word cumin out and I sold it like crazy, and everybody loved it, which I thought was funny, right? And then there was also the one time that I made lemon sorbet with chervil, which I thought was a great idea, which was not very good. I was like trying to use chervil. I don't know. It didn't work out. It was okay. I mean, and that's the funny thing is I do use that example to young cooks as well, because it's like you can come up with something, you can create all you want, but if people don't buy it, you're not going to create for very long. Right? You can be like a mule and be like, this is going to be the best thing ever. I'm going to make this and it's great. I think it's great. Everybody else should think it's great. Well, guess what? If nobody else is buying it, you're not going to be making that great dish very long at all. You'll be out of business. So at a certain point, you got to make sure that the customers are going to buy it, or else you're not going to do anything for anybody.
Do you have a favorite cookbook, one that you go back to all the time?
I mean, for me, it's more about nostalgia. I mean, when I was a young cook, looking at Marco Pierre White's White Heat, Jean-Georges Simple Cuisine, Jean-Louis Paladin, remember him?
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Watergate. I mean, I used to be a young cook and I used to leaf through those pages. Not that I've ever made anything like those things, of course, but it was just, no. And I think as a reference book, I think the only book that we should all, if I only had to have one cookbook for the rest of my life, it would be La Rousse Gastronomique. I mean, that's to me is just, it's the Bible. If I have any questions, I can find the answer to it. I don't need TikTok. I can just look at those.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have a must-have kitchen tool that
Yeah, I mean, I don't travel without my mandolin, my Japanese mandolin. I think it's one of the most important tools. Of course, they're all important, but I think that's one of them that I think is, it's very useful for a lot of things. It's just probably because it's a big time saver. I mean, if you want to slice garlic thin, with a knife, yes, I can do it. But if I need to do 3/4 of it, I want my Japanese mandolin.
If you could give one piece of advice to a young cook, what would it be?
I think anybody that wants to get into this business, before they go spend money at a cooking school or spend money doing whatever, they should just go work in just work in a professional kitchen, or just even stand in the corner and just see if that's the environment you want to be in. Because I've seen so many people that go through cooking school and then they walk into a professional kitchen and they go, "You people are crazy. I can't work here." They walk out. But it's also different now because you have a lot of different, there's so many different avenues. This is what I love about our industry is we've come a long way in the sense that, back when we started cooking, I literally thought I was going to be behind a stove my whole life cooking, and I was perfectly happy with that. But now you've got people that, there's food editors, there's people that work on TV shows that are culinary producers. There's just so many other, aspects of this business that we've created more jobs in the last 30 years than any other industry, I think. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, so many things have happened.
I mean, there's improving hospital food. There's improving school lunch programs like Dan Giusti's doing. There's, so many ways to go. And when I was in culinary school, I remember the one thing they said to me, everybody needs to eat. There will always be a job for you out there somewhere.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Read your reviews or don't read your reviews.
I don't. I don't read reviews. No, I don't. Most people, if it's really bad, I have somebody who works for me will tell me it's going really bad.
Do you remember that one moment when you were in the kitchen and then it just clicked and you knew this was going to be it forever? That moment where just it all gelled and the flow happened and you were like, I got it. I'm never leaving.
I mean, I think Prefix was probably my moment, but I think it wasn't just a moment. It was a trajectory of, you know, oh my God, I'm in the weeds. And then all of a sudden, a couple months later, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm doing this. This is good. I'm good. I think I like this. I don't have to wear a suit. I love it.
What makes you happy as a chef?
Food. I mean, it still comes down to ingredients. I get so excited, walking through a market or something like, all of a sudden I was in Paris recently and I'm lucky enough to have an apartment there and I live there and it's like these porcini. I was like, oh my God, look at these guys. They're coming home with me. I don't know. And I had no meals planned. I woke up in the morning. I diced up my porcini. I made some soft scrambled. I sauteed my porcini and my soft scrambled eggs. I was like, these are so good. It's just like, it's great when when ingredients are in the height of their season or they're just perfect, right? It's like, that's so exciting.
All right. Are you ready? This is quick answers. Ready? Coffee or tea?
Tea,
Milk or no milk? Pancakes or waffles?
not much either one, but I have to. I guess I'll do a waffle.
Oatmeal or yogurt?
Oatmeal,
Bacon, sausage?
sausage,
Chicken, duck?
duck,
Beef, pork?
beef,
Quail, squab?
squab,
Hot dog, hamburger?
hamburger,
Ketchup, mustard?
mustard,
Whole grain or Dijon?
Dijon,
French fries, onion rings?
French fries,
Taco, burrito?
taco,
Pasta, noodles?
pasta,
Ravioli, dumplings?
ravioli,
Raw oysters, raw clams?
oysters,
Lobster or crab?
crab.
What type of crab?
I mean, hopefully I'm in Japan getting those big guys that are only in season for 2 weeks.
Sea urchin or caviar?
Sea urchin,
Meatballs or sausage?
sausage,
Favorite pizza style?
Napolitana,
Butter or olive oil?
olive oil. I mean, what am I going to do? I import it. I have to.
Duck fat, pork fat? Favorite acid to cook with?
Probably red wine vinegar.
Okay. Beverage selection now, though. So red wine or white wine?
Both, but red wine probably more.
Light beer, dark beer?
Dark beer.
White spirits, dark spirits? Champagne, Prosecco, Cava, or Lambrusco?
Tough. Champagne if it's good.
Ice cream, soft serve, gelato, sorbet?
Gelato.
Cup or a cone?
Cup.
Chocolate? This is not the ice cream. Chocolate or fruit?
Fruit.
Honey, maple syrup? Favorite candy?
Well, I make these vanilla honey caramels here at work when we give them out with the check. Those are my favorite that I make.
What's your guilty pleasure? That midnight thing that you're not supposed to eat that nobody knows.
First of all, I'm never guilty of anything like that because
That's
I feel
okay.
like if I'm going to eat it, I'm going to eat it. But I usually, when I come home at night, if it's late, it's the Virginia blistered peanuts.
That's a good one. I like that.
That's my go-to usually.
What would be your last meal?
Spaghetti alla carbonara.
Mark, thank you so much. This was
Thanks,
awesome. I loved it.
This is fun.
It's really fun.
Awesome.
If people want to find you, if people are going to find you on social media, what's your Instagram handle for them to find you at?
It's at Chef Marc Murphy.
Awesome. And if people want to buy your olive oil, how do they buy your olive oil?
They go to my Umbrian Gold website.
There you go, folks.
It's I forgot just Umbrian Gold, or just go to my Instagram. You can find it there too. There's an Umbrian Gold Instagram page.
And you said they sell it at Williams Sonoma. Is that correct?
They do, yeah.
Okay, so if you don't go to his website, go to Williams Sonoma. Make sure you follow Chef Marc Murphy. He's got a lot to share. He's super fun, brilliant chef, and really, really thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule for being on the podcast with me. It really means a lot.
Thanks for doing this. I hope I'm seeing you. Am I seeing you at Pebble Beach?
No, you're going to see me at the Super Bowl.
Oh, we're doing the Super Bowl. That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about that. But are you doing Pebble Beach as well or no? Are you going to do both or no?
No, I've not been asked.
No. Okay. All right. So I'll see you at the Super Bowl. We're going to have a blast.
We'll see you. We're going to have a blast. All
Talk
right.
to you. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Hey, thanks everybody for listening. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and please follow Chef Marc Murphy. Thanks for listening to How the Sausage is Made. If you've liked what you've heard today, please make sure to like and subscribe, and don't be afraid to tell your friends about it.